When I'm done with that, I'm going to give you like a real whirlwind tour of the software, just to give you a rough idea of what's in there. No more than a few minutes, just to whet your appetite really. And then I'm going to hand over to Michael, who's going to really talk about the customer's experience, the customer's problems they are looking to solve when it comes to this effectively paperwork nightmare, because that's what it is, and really how software has helped him on his journey. Much better to hear it from someone who's been through the experience. So I'll just start with a couple of points on here around what I'm kind of looking at. So the key FSVP problems, we've heard quite a lot about that today already, and I just want to kind of focus in on some of that. Why software? Why is software going to be so useful in this this environment? And in particular, why 3iVerify? So our background or my background as a food safety expert is like over 25 years, so you can just guess what age I am. I also have had experience with food for 53 years, right from the very beginning. But so my background is a food safety consultant. Mid-1990s, HACCP becomes legislation for everything in the UK, not just seafood, not just juice, everything, right? So it may have been invented in the US with NASA, but we got it first, and we have been applying it for the best part of 30 years now, through all of our industry. So I grew up and really doing HACCP for food manufacturing companies, understanding that there's a real problem here because it generates a lot of paperwork, it generates a lot of kind of issues that need to be dealt with and so on. So I went back to university 20 years ago to do a postgraduate in software technology so I could write systems that would help with this. So I've been doing this stuff really all my life now, all my adult life anyway. So we know about FSVP. The big thing here is that it's a legal requirement on the importer, and almost everybody who's an importer needs to comply with it right now. There's no more deadlines. We're done with all that. It's right down to the smallest of businesses in terms of the importers. Of course, there are exceptions and so on, but you know what? Those exceptions, they still need a food safety plan. They still need you to verify things about them. They still need you to do your due diligence on them, whether they're foreign or domestic, as Sussy mentioned earlier on. So just because there are exceptions doesn't mean to say you don't need to do anything. So all the kind of deadlines have kind of come and gone. So why should you care? So right now the FDA is doing a kind of a soft touch educational type of phase, because there are 50,000 food importers in the US. 90% of them are small and medium-sized importers. And getting around all of them when you've got less than a couple of thousand people to do inspections and make sure everything's up to date and so on is a major, major issue. So they're trying to educate people first because it's complicated. There are grey areas, there's lots of variations and so forth. But ultimately, these are the consequences of non-compliance. As John says, that might be 3 years down the road, it might be 5 years, it might be 10 years. It doesn't really matter, because you need to start getting the house in order now, because this is coming. Sooner or later, the FDA will knock on the door if you're an importer and ask you for your FSVP. If you don't have it, it's a red flag, and it's opening up a world of pain that you now need to do and resolve quickly, rather than at your leisure, rather than building a culture and building up a kind of a culture within your business. So citations have gone up. If we kept that going until the shutdown, it would have went like that, But the number of citations is rising steadily as FDA is using these to educate. So that's what the citation is. Hey, you've not got an FSVP plan, we need you to get one, go get one. That's what that's all about at this point. So what do you need to do? You've kind of had a lot of that already. So you need to determine the food hazards. So to determine the food hazards, you need to know what you're looking at. And the import business, most import companies, especially up until a couple of years ago, did not employ food safety experts. They maybe use consultants here and there and so on. And the vast majority of small and medium-sized food importers still don't employ food safety experts. When we did some research for this event round here, we looked for PCQIs who worked at importers. Very, very few. But we found a lot of food safety consultants who were PCQIs. And that really tells the story of what's going on in the industry. So I'm going to just spend a few moments showing you 3iVerify and what that is. So the inspiration for 3iVerify really comes from what we've been doing in the UK for a long time to do with food safety. And that is really called the BRC Global Food Standard. Who's heard of that standard, the BRC Global Food Standard? Okay, so about a third of the room. So BRC Global Food Standard is claims to be, anyway, the most preeminent food safety standard for food manufacturers in the world, right? 25,000 companies or more maybe are certified to that. They typically supply into retailers and so on, and they've now got an agents and brokers standard for importers and so on, which Michael will talk about in a bit. So that standard covers everything that a food company needs to do to be able to produce safe, legal, high-quality foods. And that is everything. So supplier management, food safety management, quality management, and packaging, the whole thing. And that's kind of my background in terms of food safety management. So what we've done is we built our system, 3iVerify system, which is a cloud-based system, to meet the needs of the BRC standard. And what I can tell you is that when FDA were consulting and looking at how do we build a better food safety system in the US, what do you think they did? They looked around all the standards that were going on out there, BRC, SQF, SF, FSSC 22000. They looked at best practice, what other countries were doing, New Zealand and so on, and they took all the best things from all of these things and they came up with FSMA. That's where it came from. And that's why you've got a Scottish guy standing here telling you about food safety, right? And you've got an Irish guy about to tell you as well. Because we've been doing this, seriously, we've been doing this at this level of detail for decades, right? And that's something that you guys can benefit from because we've seen all the mistakes, we know how to make things happen. And that's what this software is. So I'm not going to delve into everything, but to give you an idea, if you've got 200 suppliers, and each of those suppliers is providing you with on average 2 or 3 products, then, and it's not quite as simple as that either, because there might be manufacturers that are not suppliers, right? So the food industry is complicated. So you've got a wholesaler overseas that you're buying from, and they are selling you product that is being manufactured by someone else. So you're going to need to identify the manufacturer, you're going to need to approve them as a supplier, you're going to need to identify each of the products that manufacturer makes or grows or whatever, and in the case of produce, that can be a lot of different people. And then you're going to need to do a hazard analysis and risk assessment on each of those products. Each of those assessments can have 10 to 20 documents associated with it. So now you've got like 100 suppliers, 2 materials each, right? So there's already, you're looking at about 300 assessments that you're going to do. And then you've got all the documents that are going with that. It very quickly multiplies into a complete and utter nightmare, because not only have you got to review those documents, read them, and then check that what they're telling you is good and effective, you've got to then monitor when they expire so that you can check that they've reviewed them the next time. So it's not just about your review of the FSVP plan, it's about making sure that their certification is still valid, which expires often on an annual basis. It's about making sure that the company that's doing the testing for them, for the COAs, is a real company, the test was legitimate, and that the test is following a recognised method, and that it's effective. These are just some of the small sort of things. So one thing that we do with the system is it's very configurable because each industry is different. Seafood industry has got its own kind of seafood HACCP needs. You've got importers that may be importing produce. They've got different sets of rules and requirements around them in terms of food safety. So we have a built-in questionnaire designer in the system that takes like effectively an online audit, send that out to them, and it's very flexible in terms of how we can design that. So that's kind of a nice part, but what I really like is, the ability to, these are all my uncompleted supplier questionnaires, the ability to drill into that, and you know what, I don't have much time today, I can't send 200 emails today, so I just want to hit the button and send one email to all of them to chase them, to get that information moving along. Now in reality, 50-60% of those will respond fairly quickly, the rest you're going to have to chase them anyway. The real world is that you get the people that are proactive, you get the ones in the middle, and then you get the downright lazy and the downright obstructive, right? So to overcome some of that, what we do is we copy in the the commercial contact at the supplier. So you just look in the supplier area here, just pick a supplier out. This is the kind of thing that we do. So in here, in the contacts area, you've got, when you send the questionnaires out, we can CC the commercial contact. Because the commercial contact is the person who's going to lose the business. They're going to lose revenue, commission, whatever it is, whatever their commercial interest in it is. If the supplier is not approved or the material is not approved, they've just lost the sale. So we CC the commercial contact. What we also do is we can have additional contacts in here. We can CC the CEO of the company. So, if it gets to that level, so we can add the CEO and the company in there and make sure that we're getting responses to our requests for information, because that's the biggest thing that can really give you a problem with this. So from there, we send the questionnaires out here, and there are just some examples here. We can design any kind of questionnaire just to give you a bit of a flavour there. If you're dealing with a BRC certificated site or a GFSI certificated site, generally all we want is a certificate, last audit report, and a copy of the FDA audit report for practical purposes, because that will tell us quite a lot by reading what an inspector has already found about that supplier. That's on the supplier approval. On the material approval, we're looking for the HACCP plan, we're looking for copies of the labels that they're putting on the product when it's coming over here. We compare that with the composition of the product to make sure the allergens are correct, for example. We're probably also wanting the glass policy, foreign bodies, and any other controls that we've identified from that. So the supplier area allows us to manage all of the sending for requests for information. Now under FSVP, 3 years is the period by which you must review the supplier, right? And so you need to keep these records and you must review the supplier. However, in the real world, things change. The supplier may be using a different manufacturer, they may have changed a process in their factory, there may be a change of ownership, and they've got a different food safety culture. All of a sudden, costs are being cut, and food safety is compromised. You need to be on top of that. You need to know what's happening with your supplier. So we've built in tools like Supplier Alerts, and the Supplier Alerts feature will monitor things like FDA import alerts. It will monitor Food Standards Agency in the UK, Canada, Australia, etc., etc. Wherever we can get data, we'll monitor that information live, and we'll match it to your suppliers and your materials. So if there's something going on, it should ping up to you and then give you a mechanism for correcting that. And that's important, because there's no way in the world that you can sit there and just watch your supply chain, because you don't know what's going on in your supply chain, really. So that gives you a bit of an example. So we've got tools for managing the corrective actions, your internal SOPs and documentation. It's a full document management system in there for that, because again, FDA is going to want to see, when you reviewed that document, what's the competency of the person that wrote it? Are you actually doing what you say you're doing in that document? And have you told everyone about it? Is everyone using that process, that procedure in your organization? So these are just some hints, really, at what we do as a company. We are food safety experts first, software developers second. And that's what we built as a system that really meets the needs of the food industry in terms of compliance. So that's my pitch over. I'm going to kind of hand on to Michael here, and he's going to tell you his story from recovery from this documentitis that he had. Okay.
Documentitis.
What do you, Michael?
Tech person, can you put me up?
Yeah.
Which is a really good place to start.
Here we go.
So we talk about importers. You know, the vast majority of people who start import companies, they're not really importers, they're salespeople. We have to sell product in order to have a company. So it's kind of like, becomes a vicious circle very, very quickly. So Culinary Collaborations, we're a sushi resource for very large sushi operations, particularly those that are trying to put clean, natural, traceable programs in place. We do what we call 360 sourcing. Our clients come to us because sushi still tends to be a little bit of a mystery, especially for large organizations. If you look at a retailer that has 100 or 1,000 or 2,500 locations, sushi is often a revenue line on their P&L because they're basically renting space. However, when a consumer comes in and buys sushi from that operator, the consumer doesn't think that they're buying from ABC sushi makers. They think they're buying from retailer. And if and when, or unfortunately if they get sick, they sue retailer, not sushi operator. So retailers are starting to become the drivers of standards implementation and acceptance, really. So my biggest fear, my worst day begins if one of my clients calls me and says, we have a problem. So they hire us because typically they never have to call us. We're very, very client focused. We don't sell from catalogs. We work with clients that say, hey, we have this problem, solve this problem. Wow, you did such a good job with that one. Here's another problem, and so on and so forth. So today we're an importer and we're a broker. We import seafood, we import produce, avocados, we import food contact packaging, we import equipment. So, you know, we talked about the food safety standards that we have to adhere to, but we left a few off. You know, who's heard of TACCP and VASP? There we go. These are two things we have to look at now as well with FSMA. My company is a relatively small company. We turn over maybe $37, $38 million a year. Margins on food aren't that big. So it doesn't mean that we can hire 25 people and have them do all of this. The most expensive piece of equipment in any business is a person. And to Susie's point earlier, the more complicated that tool, or the more trained that tool, the more expensive it is. And I don't fear the FDA. I don't fear any of the regulatory agencies. I fear my client. Because if I get a warning letter, I'm done, I'm out. I have two of my major clients have a standard internal policy that if I am cited, immediately cease business. And they have plan Bs in place that they have discussed with me and said, if you ever, you are out. So when you have a client that does 12, 13, $14 million with you, you tend to get your priorities on fear right. We're GFSI certified. Actually, we're on the road, we're almost there. But all of our supply comes from GFSI certified sources. Over the past 10 years, I've helped the majority of them become GFSI certified. I've taken 3 companies to SQF level 3, and it's 3 times a nightmare in paperwork. I don't ever want to do it again. But again, this is our USP. This is why clients hire us. You know, I translate it to numbers. 40 vendors is 900 documents that have a valid date and an expiration date. 900. That translates into 40 documents a week. It's a full-time job. And wait a second, I can't put a basic clerical person on that, because if I put a basic clerical person on that, they don't know what they're looking at. And you can't say, okay, just check the dates here and go there. You have to actually have a qualified, trained person on it that knows what they're looking at. With a constant flow of new vendors, new products, and crossing over from seafood to FSVP to produce to food contact packaging, it becomes a real nightmare for a small company. And it's not all complicated. It's like you have to know the rules and follow the rules. How do you do that? Well, this is part of why I went searching out. By the way, one of my other foibles is I suffer from shiny object syndrome, which means new tools. I love them. I'll check them. So I've done basically the research for you on the best tools to help you do this. And 3iVerify is, without question, the best tool in the market right now. Technical genius, can you make the video work?
Yeah, just go back to the last slide.
One voice on that?
Yeah.
On the mic?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
To this slide.
okay,
Yeah.
and we click that.
Yeah.
Just
that
watch
should
the
be
volume, Ellie. It's super loud.
good. Go on.
Except for big voice.
Yeah, you might want to just rewind it and switch it. And just as a side note, we did this video back in 2017, just a month or so prior to the kind of main deadline on FSVP, and it was really to try and capture the story of an importer. You know, this video. Got sound? I know the problems. Techie genius, so-called. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, try that now. Okay.
Meet Kate. Kate is a busy import broker who imports hundreds of foods from suppliers worldwide. Hundreds of Kate's customers need supplier food safety credentials or risk prosecution, large fines, and costly product recalls. Kate collects thousands of documents for them, but they're quickly outdated and she has no time to check supplier claims. Kate's boss tells her about a new law called FSVP, Foreign Supplier Verification Program. We're legally required to provide verified information to the FDA within 24 hours, or it could cost us big. With over 1,000 products, it's a huge job. Kate starts a spreadsheet. She works late for weeks, updating her spreadsheets. After dozens of phone calls, emails, and faxes, she's verified only a few dozen suppliers, and it's already out of date. Exhausted, Kate Googles and finds 3iVerify.com. It sounds like a perfect solution. She contacts them and arranges a call. The friendly experts at 3iVerify show how to automate the process using an online assessment that the supplier completes quickly and easily. Kate and her colleagues can easily review, verify, and risk assess the products they buy and schedule the assessment to be resent automatically on expiry. 3iVerify produces a single document with links to all supporting information that can be emailed instantly to her customers or the FDA on request. It even makes life easy for suppliers who can share their information with other customers, saving them time. 3iVerify is affordable and can be deployed in just a few days. Kate's boss no longer worries about prosecution or Kate's overtime costs, and he sleeps like a baby at night. Kate's leaving work early to go to a party, confident.
I'm stopping it there because that's not true. Kate's not leaving work early because I got other things for her to do. That's Kate in the back there. So, just get over that. So 3iVerify, since I put it in, 3iVerify makes my day. Because as the CEO of the company, I have one major fear. How's my day going to go? Am I going to have a recall? Am I going to have a problem? Can I answer the questions? If the FDA shows up, and this is a real concern for me because the FDA has shown up on the door of several of my clients. It was mentioned earlier, it's like John said, well, it's in a tryout period. Tryout, they catch you you're in a finish out period. So it's kind of like having had 3 clients with the FDA show up. By the way, 2 of them were in Japan. So this is what I want to see. Where do I stand on supplier compliance? Where do I stand on product approval, raw material approvals? Are my documentations current? Am I ready? Because again, as I told you, my number 1 concern is when my client asks me. My clients have a full food safety and compliance departments because they're retailers with 48,000 employees. So they've got a 100-person compliance department, and it seems like some of them have nothing to do except ask me for, can I have the search in this? Can I see your workflow on that? Can I have your HACCP plan? No. Why? It's a domestic supplier. You can have my letter of guarantee. Oh, okay, that'll do. But I wanted with the workflow. Okay. Or I want your can I have your audit report? No, because I'm not going to show you my total weaknesses, but I'll give you the summary with the corrective actions. So again, there's an awful lot of back and forth on this. Document management, I can accomplish this now with 1 full-time person. So that cuts my expense. Use your own math. What does 1 person cost? Use $100,000 for a round number, because it's not just the cost of salary and benefits and et cetera, it's the travel, it's all of the extra things if you fully put it in. So a person costs 100 grand no matter where you are. It doesn't really matter. I'm down to 1 person. So that was the biggest thing for me. The second thing is a little more about my company. My company is a virtual company, like many importers are, like many distributors are. I import lots of food. It goes straight into 3PL. It doesn't come into my office. If you actually were to look for my office is where I happen to be. I have employees in Florida, New York, Brazil. We work really well together, but this is the modern, I think we call it the millennial way or whatever. If the FDA calls and says, I want to do a site inspection, it's kind of like, I'm on Delta 307, it'll be a 2-hour flight, do you want to meet me on that? That's kind of a reality for me, but if they do want to, they've got to come to the office in Rochester and I got to make sure I'm there, but there is no product there. This is very, very normal. One of the things that we did when we started the company, which many importers don't do, is I made sure that we were never going to be slaves to equipment. Our entire business is cloud-based. We don't have a checkbook, actually. So I can't accept payment from somebody that wants to send me a check. I've actually sent checks back and said, I don't know what to do with this. We're completely cloud-based. I have a 27-year-old son in the business. Part of the inspiration is get millennials in your business. They really do make you feel old. No, sorry, they really do make you do things in today's terms. Because what we're doing today is for tomorrow, right? So, everything's in the cloud. So my business continuity plan has 2 lines. 1, I hope Preferred's double backup doesn't break down. And 2, find a new computer. 3iVerify integrates with this beautifully. Because the one thing that my retailers don't care about is what my problems are internally. If I can't get my fingers on a document when they want it, they start reminding me about Plan B. So to be really efficient, fast, and on the spot sets me apart from my competitors. In today's environment, I have competitors inside my accounts every bloody day of the week, except they can't do what we do, because we are staying out on the front end. The retailers, GFSI is being driven by retailers. This is part of their risk mitigation plan. And this is the old thing, crap rolls downhill. It's like somebody in, the CEO of Walmart actually is probably the most powerful person in the world, because he says all of our vendors have got to be GFSI. His next line passes it down, next line, and somewhere VPs are kind of low. They work in small companies in Bensonville. They pass it down and it's like, all vendors now have to be GFSI. And if you're not, you're out. Well, every other retailer has followed this. So GFSI is basically a requirement. If you're selling to restaurants, no problem. But if you choose to be in a larger customer base, you're going to be heavily regulated and you're going to have to follow it. Which is the other part of 3iVerify that we like. We're going through the process of GFSI certification. For those of you that have been through it, you already know what I'm talking about. You're talking about 30-something SOPs, 40-something forms, 10 registers, 8 logs. Don't upset me. So, we do all of this, and as we develop them, we put them up into 3iVerify. So 3iVerify becomes the repository for our food safety manual. Our HACCP plan is in there, our workflows are in there, and then our templates are going to be in there. And then our team. When our team, like, hey, I had a QMR 18 this morning. Oh, what's that? That's a customer complaint form. I know what it is because I get so many of them. It doesn't mean that every complaint is a problem for me. Quite often it's DOE, dumb operator error. Okay? But you got to be able to log these. You got to trend track, and 3i makes that work. Supplier approval and monitoring. This is the biggest impact of FSMA, FSVP. You know, 10, 12 years ago, I didn't really care what my supply had in terms of certifications or qualifications or whatever. I did due diligence, and I've always been very careful, but it didn't really matter. But what's happened now is that, as we started this morning, is there's only one person responsible anymore, and that's the importer. That's me. Our clients made us sign a 2-page document that we are the FSVP for any of the imported products that we supply to them. And if anything goes awry, they've got a free pass, and it all lands at my desk. Because of the GFSI certification, because of our processes, because of our procedures, our liability insurance has actually gone way down. So the better you are at what you do, there's knock-on benefits. Daily tasks. Yeah, like I said, we had one this morning. Thankfully, it's another DOE. But we have all of these things to keep our fingers on all of the time. It's just a natural part of being in the business, and especially because we cross over 3-4 different areas. The risk management, I've already gone into this. So with most national retailers, their efforts towards risk management has been to try and gather as much CYA documentation from their vendors as is possible, and to try and keep it current. So, with one of our clients, we have a very onerous online document database, whatever you want to call it, to fill for each product. It doesn't matter whether this product is actually $4,000 a year in total sales or $4 million a year in total sales. It's the same exact amount of time. This used to take us weeks to gather the info, and this was us, send me your workflow, send me your SQF certificate. You sent me an expired certificate. It's this nightmare that any of us that are importing are familiar with. So 3-4 weeks to do an upload to the system. Meanwhile, the retailer's yelling at us like, what's taking so long? Other people aren't taking this long. Why are you taking so long? Yeah. So now we created this document in 3iVerify. We send it off to the technical contact and the commercial contact at our supplier. If, when Renee goes in and checks the red bars on questionnaires and it hasn't been answered, actually you can set up an auto. If they don't fill this out in 1 week, send a reminder. If they don't send it out in 2 weeks, send a reminder. If they don't send it out in 3 weeks, send it to me. At this point, it goes back to the other influences to get documents filled out, which is fill it out or we find another supplier. We are now down to none of the collection time because 3i sets up a system where our suppliers self-complete. This is the biggest time saver ever. And once it's self-completed, we can actually upload in an hour because it's all there to hand. So talking about the 3i Verify resources, yes, you can get set up as an account in 10 minutes. Give them your credit card and you have an account. Getting it actually working takes a little bit longer, but the training is there. The neat thing about, again, this millennial age is that you push a button and you're looking at each other on a computer screen, you know. So the fact that support might be in Scotland or anywhere in the world doesn't make any difference. I just need to know that they're up at the same time as I am, which might be 2 a.m. here, and that I can get the problem solved that I want solved right now. The other part of this is the small, medium-sized importer part. It's like, as I said, most companies are actually sales companies. They're not food safety. They're not food safety experts. They're sales experts. So it's kind of like, what do I do next? How do I solve this? So 3iVerify, probably because of all of the tech support calls that were non-revenue generating on issues that weren't related to software, came up with a network of experts around the world. Absolutely brilliant. You have Sussy, you've got Jennifer, you've got a bunch of them. So this was probably worth as much as the software by itself. Data migration or migration. You know, we were having a conversation with James back in, I don't remember, I'm looking at Renee because I don't remember. But anyways, it's kind of just having this conversation. James says, well, I've got a data entry resource in India. Drop everything in a folder, we'll have them uploaded for you. It was fabulous. It's fabulous. Yes, it cost me $25 an hour to get what would have cost me days and a lot more than that. So 3i is a collaborative partner. There is no system that you can push a button on and it works. Every one of us have a different business, have a different requirement, have a different need. So buying a piece of software out of a box doesn't work anymore. You have to be actually able to turn it on and say, can you help me make this work? And Primority does an outstanding job on that. Why do I like it? Everything's in one place. One place. It's a recurring theme right up there. Everything's in one place. Okay? Previously, I didn't know where to look. And it's all there. It's in a file somewhere. It was named something, and I can find it given an unlimited period of time. It's kind of like traceability. Traceability exists. It's just in file folders all over the world. How do I get it when I have a recall? I need to be able to get it now. Actually, I've never had a recall. And attention to systems like this is why. But we have customer requests every day. I want the specification for this. I have great customers. They're great because they're strict. I sent a specification to a customer not long ago. I got an email back saying, why wasn't this signed by us? Renee? And it's kind of like, she's like, he sent an email, here's your email. I sent it back to the customer, all within the space of about 8 or 9 minutes. The customer was like, oh, okay, now let's get back to the subject. This is the real world. Audits. You know, we all prep for these things, but it's, you know, it's 2 weeks before an audit where you really start to have the sweats. And you start looking for things. You know, one of my GFSI audits, I spent an awful lot of time prepping folks on the team on it. And the night before the audit, I'm there, I go down to the receiving office, pull a couple of books and look at it. It's like, are you kidding me? I call the doc supervisor. It's 11:45 at night, and it's kind of like, get your butt in here now. He had photocopied the temperature records for the last 3 months, photocopied them, and just wrote the date and signed it and put them all in the book. It's like, are you kidding? Yeah, it wasn't a good week for him, but we got it fixed. We actually managed to find lots of records, and we had a bunch missing. So we wrote up a non-conformance, put the corrective action in, and I said, I'll work with the auditor, because auditors are real people too, right? You know, is there perfection? No. But if there's a genuine effort, if you try and deceive people, you're going to get a reaction that's equal or exceeds it. But if you're reasonable, if you are truthful, if you're genuine about what you can do, they can see it in your systems. So missing a few documents isn't necessarily a fail. But don't try and be too smart. 3i is fabulous in the sense that it's easy to implement and it's affordable. So let's talk about that for a second. 3i cost me less than $500 a month. The services I order above and beyond, that's up to me. But it cost me less than $500 a month to get a system that puts everything in one place. And it has made a huge difference. You know, there's also an openness to the relationship. It's kind of like talking about how do we develop this better, save more. That's all there. So I'm quite happy. Inside our company, this is our team. Everybody does more than one thing. You know, there's no such a thing in the United States. One of the things I've always found is like buyers. Buyers are really, really busy people. Quite often, they're more budget allocators than they are buyers. So you have to help them and educate them. So as a salesperson, you have to become expert in a lot of different areas. But a buyer will bring in the food safety person and they ask you about your food safety programs. And it's like, okay, wasn't quite prepped for this meeting. Well, you better be prepped. So in our world, at least that's what we look at, and that's our competitive difference. And thank you very, very much. Obviously, this is the last slide I have in lots of our sales presentations that says, how can I get your order next? So if you have any questions, now's the time.